Hello, welcome back to our second video talking about radicals and square roots. The other day we talked about square roots, and I mentioned that you can use the radical symbol, but it's not always a square. And so today we are going to be talking about when it is a cubed, so cubed roots. Once again, here a picture of my notes. This is how you should be setting yours up. They are on our website, so if you can go to that, open it up, you can definitely model yours off of it. They don't necessarily have to look exactly like mine, but the format does. So our objective for today is I will be able to define cube root and perfect cube and to solve problems using my notes. So the definition of cubed root, so the term cubed root needs to be going on that left side of that line, and the definition is on the right, just like in that picture that I showed you of my notes. So a cubed root of a number is a value which, when used as a factor 3 times, produces the given number. Okay? So, for example, when we talk about cubed roots, we always talk about cubes. A cube root is talking about a cube. And so a three-dimensional figure as shown below. Now, instead of square, a square root, remember, is two-dimensional. It talks about area. When we're talking about cubes, which is three-dimensional, and cube roots, we're talking about volume. So in this picture, we're going to assume the volume is equal to 8 centimeters cubed. And we want to find that side length. And remember, side is length times width times height, or side cubed with volume, because they're all the same length. They're all the same size. And so we're asking ourselves, what number cubed is equal to 8? So when we think about that, we think, well, I know that 2 times 2 times 2 equals 8. And we can rewrite that as 2 cubed, which is equal to 8. Once again, once we get to our bigger numbers, it's harder for us to think about, well, what times what times what? The same number times itself 3 times is equal to that number. So when another way that we could write that is, there we go, is the cubed root of 8. The cubed root of 8. Now, for the cubed root, remember this little number up here is called the index. So let's write that. That's a good thing for us to know. This is called the index, and I'm going to try my best here with my writing. It's pretty good, the index. So that 3 right here is the index. Remember, in the square roots, they're not always, in the square roots, they're not always there, and so it's assumed if there's nothing there, it's a square. Well, in the cubed roots, it has to be there. It has to be a 3. So the index is 3. Okay, so perfect cubed, or a cube number, which is the same thing, you might hear it, perfect cube, cube number, same thing, also known as, is a number that is the cube of an integer. So remember we talked about perfect squares? Well, we have the same thing with perfect cubes. All right. So example 27 is a perfect cube because 3 cubed is equal to 27. All right. So perfect cube has to have a couple things. The first thing is it has to be a whole number, and that it describes the volume of a cube. We just talked about that. And the cubed root of x describes one side of that cube. We just talked about all of those things in the previous slide. So here's an illustration on how with 125 is a perfect cube. So 5 cubed is equal to 125, and each of those little boxes is a layer on our cube. Okay? So for the cube roots, I expect you to know the roots 1 through 10, and once again, you don't need to write this down because I'm going to have something to glue into your notebooks when we come into class tomorrow, or maybe later today whenever you're watching the video. So when we solve these, the cubed root of 1,000, we can use that cheat sheet, but eventually we'll know is equal to 10. The cubed root of 216 is equal to 6. And the cubed root of 64 is equal to 4. Those are just common facts that we need to memorize. Okay, so that's all that I have on cube roots today. Just like we did last video, I forgot to make a slide over it, but at the bottom of your notes, I'm expecting you to write 2 questions. So 2 questions, whether that's something that you're confused over, or where are we headed next, or what does this have to do with anything in real life. Anything that's relevant to what we just talked about, I will accept for as a question. So that is part of your homework, to bring in that question. So thank you so much for being active listeners and for being diligent in writing down your notes, and I will see you tomorrow.